It worked. Okay, everybody, welcome to week 2 of creative presentation. So I'm glad to see that we have such a great number of students here in the live session today on a Tuesday afternoon. I really appreciate you guys showing up at the live session so we can interact and work together and have questions answered and all that in real time. But if you can't make it, of course, to the live session, you're probably listening to the recording. So welcome to you guys too. So as I mentioned, before we started, welcome to week 2. This is when it starts getting real. This is kind of an intense week. I'm not trying to put anyone off at this point, but it does get to be a little intense this week. And we have on top of that still our week 1 assignments are due tonight. So it's a little bit of a cram in here because week number 2 assignments are due this upcoming Sunday. And I'll go over all of this, of course, throughout the go-to session in great detail. But guys, if you haven't got your week 1 assignments in yet, I know that the deadline is tonight at 11:59 p.m. So of course you have quite a few hours to do that, but that really needs to be your priority, and making sure that you guys are on the right track and you're not falling behind or procrastinating. So be sure that you get those assignments for week number 1 all completed by this evening so you can kind of put that behind you. I will start my grading for the week 1 assignments tomorrow, first thing in the morning, so you'll start to see my grades and feedback start to come back through the FSO platform for you guys. So that will start tomorrow. But I really want you to start week number 2, which actually started yesterday, on a great note, not falling behind and moving forward, because this is when we're going to start to build your final presentations that we'll be working towards for the remainder of the month. So it really starts to be important that you're completing your assignments on time. You're taking in the feedback and you're moving forward from this point, guys. So again, glad you're here with us on Tuesday afternoon. Just as a reminder, if you haven't done so already, and I'm seeing a lot of your wonderful, beautiful faces coming through on the platform, which I greatly appreciate, but if you haven't done so yet, if you would please add your photo to your profile in the FSO platform. It really helps me get to know you guys a little bit better. It puts faces and names together for me. Keep in mind, I have about 75 students at this point, and I only have you for a month. So it does help me to learn who you are a little bit quicker when I can see your face and put it to a name. Excuse me, and that helps me get to know you guys just a little bit better. I know we're only together for a short amount of time, but you guys do. I love keeping in contact with you and making sure you're getting a really personalized experience, and that helps me out quite a bit. So if you weren't here last week for the live session, just to kind of recap a couple of things, I will be watching the chat box and looking for hands, more so in the chat box, really, though. It kind of takes me out of my groove here and what I'm doing to kind of scroll through the list looking for hands raised. So if I do miss you, just put a note in the chat box really quick saying, hey, my hand's up, I'd like to ask a question really quick. But I'll stop also periodically to answer any questions that you guys might have about the assignments, about the material that we're going over this week. So you guys definitely have ample time to, if you've got concerns or questions, to ask those here. And I love that you do that in front of the group, because someone else might have the same question or want clarification as well, and everybody gets to hear that. So that's wonderful. So just want to take a quick break before we get started. How are you guys feeling after our week number 1? Are you feeling comfortable? Are you feeling chaotic? What is the general mood? If you want to answer me in the chat box, I'd love to hear how you're feeling after our first full week. Seeing an feeling excited, jittery. Okay, so there's a lot of different emotions that are happening for you guys. I know that you're juggling a lot. We're coming off of the holiday season. It's sometimes hard to get back into the groove of things. So it can be a little bit relieving now that you've seen how everything is going and you kind of have your own groove going. As Emily is saying, you're getting to a groove, into a routine, and how to juggle, life in general, and relationships and jobs and children if you have them, and school. So really, guys, I'm glad to hear that you're feeling that. If you are still feeling overwhelmed, stick it out. Just keep going, fake it till you make it. And it'll eventually come. It's just sometimes it's a little jarring, especially with the pace of Full Sail. It's tough to get used to. It's very fast. And I really want to get you guys on a path of of just staying ahead of the game, because procrastination, especially with these month-long classes, can really come and bite you. And I don't want you guys to feel overwhelmed and you're at the point where you can't catch up. And that's going to be a huge learning lesson for many people that are procrastinators, is to really get ahead of the assignments, do a little bit each day so it doesn't pile on top of you and you're overwhelmed at the end and you feel like quitting. That's the last thing that I want you to have happen. So I'm seeing a lot of great comments in there. Thank you guys for telling me how you're feeling. I'm seeing a lot of feeling pretty good. Nicholas saying getting it done, focused, and some of you guys are feeling a little, still, a little bit like you're lost or something. So if you are feeling like you want to have a conversation with me, just one-on-one, we can chat. We can kind of put a schedule together to check in each week. Just let me know, and we can chat after that. I am seeing a question coming up in the private box. So you're saying you have a question. So if you have a question for me, guys, you can always put those in the chat boxes or raise your hand and let me know, or we can talk one-on-one off to the side as well. Yeah, Nick, it is a little hard to get used to a study schedule. And that's something that I want to talk about on this next slide, is kind of when things, like, have some real talk with you guys for a bit. So I wanted to kind of give you some reminders and things that I notice usually moving from week 1 into week 2, and maybe some pointers and some just guidance and wisdom that I can give you guys to help set you up for success, okay? And one of them, Nick is saying in the chat box, it's hard getting used to a study schedule, okay? And at one point, a couple of months ago, someone had told me, she's like, I can't figure out how to juggle it all. It's just too much. It's too overwhelming, everything that I have going on. And I said, let's talk for a minute. Let's get real for a minute. And I said, there's a lot of things that if you're going to commit to something like college, there's things that you're going to have to say no to in order to say yes to this. And so one of the things that I gave the example of was social media. I mean, what a time suck it can become. I mean, it just drags my time away from my family, from my job, all this stuff. And it's pointless scrolling is what it is. It's mind-numbing, pointless scrolling. And some of us kind of need to zone out sometimes. Totally get it. But what are the things in your life that you could say no to in order to be more successful with college, in order to be more successful with school? Because this is a big commitment. It's a financial commitment. It's a time commitment, all of that. So it's a major commitment. So there's some things that you kind of have to shift and adjust and set a schedule and time for every single day in order to be successful with your own degree programs, with all of your classes. It's very fast paced. I'm here in the beginning, and a lot of instructors are very, very helpful. Some are not as helpful as others. So you kind of have to learn these different styles as well. So I wanted to have that little snippet of a discussion there, but also some reminders as well, going from week 1 into week 2, is to ask for, if you have technical problems, uploading issues, can't log into a particular program, maybe the Microsoft, the 365, you can't log into those, you really need to be reaching out to FSO support. They are going to be your tech gurus who can help you out with that. I've got a little bit of knowledge of that, but they are really the ones with the tools and the access that can help you and work you through some of these tech issues. So if you're coming to me with some tech issues, definitely come to me first, and if I can't help you, I will send you along to FSO support with their contact information as well. But they are there for you guys to help you with anything technical or technology based that you would need assistance with. Another one is ask for help early in the week. So we got started last Wednesday, which traditionally, it's a later start date than most of your classes will be. As you can see, we started week 2. We're back on a normal schedule. We started week 2 on Monday. And then so we have our go-to sessions on Tuesday. So which means, early on in the day, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you have all of that time to really look into the assignments and be sure that you understand them clearly. And if you don't, ask me for help early in the week. I do at times check in over the weekend, but it's not guaranteed, depending upon whatever craziness my two boys have me doing every weekend. Like, for instance, there's a huge soccer tournament this weekend, so I'm going to be on a field in the dirt for most of the day, and I won't have my laptop in front of me. So I really encourage you guys to be asking questions early in the week as opposed to leaving it towards the weekend where I might not be available, and then your due dates, of course, on Sunday nights at 11:59 p.m., and I want to be able to get back to you. Casey, I see your message. I'll come back to that in a moment. Time management, we just talked about. Really, guys, you have to get the time management issues under control. Think about, just really kind of take a really hard look at where it is that you are spending your energy. And if you're thinking this is too much for me right now, I don't have the time, think of the places where you can cut some of that wasted energy, not necessarily, maybe not wasted, but you could put more energy and time into something that's going to benefit you much more in the long run. So think about those issues that you could start to kind of think about for time management, and make sure that you are doing a little bit every single day and not leaving it to the end of the week. Due dates. Okay, guys. So I've talked to a couple of you guys, and you've mentioned that the due dates are really kind of messing with you, which I hate to see, but they are. It's full sails away. Okay, so all of the due dates that you see are going to be Eastern Standard Time. Within the platform, you can adjust your time zones in there to be sure that you are turning your work in before the due date, because as you can see, and you'll see it tonight, if some of you guys try to upload at the last minute and it clicks over to midnight 12:01, it will shut you out, and I have to manually reopen the platform and let you submit the work, and we have to go back and forth, and it's kind of a rigmarole. So be sure that you're submitting by the Eastern Standard Time zone deadlines, okay? Late work. All right. So we really haven't gotten to the point where anything is late right now, except for the week 1 initial post for the discussion board, the 1.3 discussion board. I asked you guys to post those last Friday in order to give your classmates time to come in and really interact with you. And there's been a lot of great interaction within the discussion board. So if you haven't yet posted your initial post, I will still accept the initial post this week being late, but be sure that you have all of your replies and your 1.4, the TED Talk assignment, all submitted by tonight at 11:59. Traditionally, this is how I handle late work. It's really something you should avoid at all costs, because once you start to get behind, it's really tough to come back. I will just say that from this past year of teaching this class 12 times in a row. It really is. I can see it happen, and it's really something that could be easily prevented. So try to avoid late work as best as possible. So usually in the first week, I know you guys are still getting acclimated. So I accept the late work, and I don't normally apply a penalty, but you need to reach out to me. You must reach out to me, let me know what's going on, and hopefully have the work done as soon as possible. Traditionally, with Full Sail, there is a 3-day extension period, but there is also a penalty that comes along with that, and it's 10 points per day. So if your work is 3 days late, that's an automatic. At most, you can get a 70, which at Full Sail is a D. So you want to avoid turning in late work as much as possible. So that's usually in weeks 1 and 2. That's kind of how that goes. Like, I don't apply the late penalty in week 1 because I know you're getting acclimated. Week 2, I will apply that penalty. Really, guys, in week 3 and week 4, unless you've got some kind of written documentation, maybe that there's some kind of family emergency, or maybe you were sick in the hospital, something like that, I don't accept late work. So you really want to avoid that practice, especially, guys, in week 4, when I'm starting a new month, you're starting a new month, you want to avoid that practice, okay? So I just wanted to mention those items and how I traditionally deal with late work. And then if I have provided you an extension and it's 3 days, I'm not going to accept any late work after that extension has been applied, unless there's, some major circumstance going on, and we've discussed that, and there's an exception that's made. But as a general rule, if you're past that 3-day extension and you're still not turning your work in, I will not accept it at that point. You really need to be on task with turning in your work. All right, I had a question. Casey, let's see. Okay, so Casey's offering some advice about being the third year in college, and something that you find helpful in time management is forcing yourself to read the content early and read it all within the first 2 days. I think that's wonderful advice, Casey. Thank you for sharing that with everyone. And you're saying that it also, the reading assignments when they are available, allows you to get a grasp of the week. Yeah, I totally agree with you on that one. The reading is something that you guys can easily do on Mondays before we have the go-to session, so you know what's going on. I usually also send out like a welcome to week 2 message, and I'll include some pre-work in there. Like this week, I included a link to a TED Talk by Simon Sinek that I asked you guys to watch prior to attending the live session here. So hopefully you received that and were able to watch it, because I will be referencing that a little bit here in the live session. Rakia is saying, I hope I said your name right. TED Talks are becoming an addiction for you now. I totally can understand that. Once you kind of get into that TED Talk, the TED Talk black hole, you just keep going and going and going. But I'm glad that you're enjoying some of the topics that you're looking into. Pepe, you're saying you accidentally failed the naming conventions. Okay, so the item 6 and 7 here on my list. With the file naming conventions, guys, just try. I'm not going to count off points if you don't have the correct file naming conventions. I might go and put a reminder in there saying, hey, just you want to get into practice of keeping your files organized and correctly labeled, because you might want to reference one or pull something from a prior class and you have no idea where it is. So get used to naming your files in that standard format that I have here on this slide. Rakia, I'm glad I pronounced your name correctly. That's great. And then I kind of skipped number 6 here, but a couple of you guys used Adobe Spark for the 1.4 assignment, which I was glad to see. I'll start grading those tomorrow, but a lot of you guys are using Spark, but you notice that you can't just upload your Spark program into the platform for a successful submission, because the platform only allows you to upload files, not websites. But the way to kind of get around that is by uploading a Word document and including your name and the link to the presentation that you've created, or a link to the file that you've, whatever it happens to be, the YouTube file, whatever it happens to be, put that within the Word document and then upload your submission there. Emily is saying, can we submit a PDF? Absolutely. PDFs are great because none of the formatting is going to change between the delivery. So PDFs, I absolutely welcome you guys to use PDFs as much as you would like to. Gerard, thank you for adding your advice as well. Setting a scheduled time aside is a big help when in a fast-paced class. Absolutely. Schedules, time management, guys, that is going to be the key, the absolute key to your success, as well as reaching out to your resources, using the resources that are available to you as a student at Full Sail, guys. So I just wanted to go over those reminders and things that I traditionally see after the first week. I know, again, you're getting acclimated and you're just trying to absorb as much as you can. You can't remember everything, but those are important things that I wanted to mention to you moving into week number 2. All right, so my feedback, as I mentioned, I will be starting grading in the morning. It does take a bit of time. Traditionally, my grades are due on Thursdays, but since we had that backup, you guys had that 2-day extension, my grades are going to be due on Friday at the end of day this week. So if you haven't received anything just yet, or if you like, say you go into Wednesday and Thursday and you haven't received a grade or a feedback just yet, give me until Friday, and I will have that back to you. I work as quickly as I can. I know you guys are waiting for that. You're wanting to see how you did on your assignments with the grade and have, some direction from them, and I will get that to you as quickly as possible. But I will begin grading tomorrow morning when I'm in the office around 9:30. So I wanted to also mention, guys, that even if you've received a 100 on the assignment, okay, there's still going to be comments or suggestions for even further improvement. I'm going to highlight the things that you did very well and tell you, even if you wanted to do this or take it to the next level, try and do that. There's always room for improvement. So be sure to always go in and check my feedback. It is personalized for each of you. It does take quite a bit of time, especially as the assignments start moving into your presentations. I do take a lot of time and energy, so I would like to be sure that you are reading that feedback as well. So this week, after we've been concentrating on becoming the audience, and I've made you guys all TED Talk addicts, as you're saying in the chat box here, we're going to start working on you becoming the presenter or the mentor, okay? And that takes some planning. So that's what this week is all about. So we want to be sure that you are creating the steps to a successful presentation. So this week will be all about planning. It's a vital step. A lot of people breeze right over this step, but you shouldn't do it. We must start with a plan. All right, so this week we're really going to get into figuring out what you're going to be doing for the remainder of our month together. So the focus this week is on planning a presentation. And in this course, you'll be creating, like I told you last week, a final presentation. Okay, it's a brand yourself pitch to a specific company or client that you would like to work with in the future. All right, so we will be taking this major final project in 3 different phases. Okay, so phase number 1 is the planning phase, and that's what we'll be working on here in week 2. Phase number 2 is the first draft. Okay, so next week we'll start talking about how to incorporate all of the visual aspect of your presentation, and you'll actually create a first draft of the brand yourself presentation. And then in our final week together, which is week 4, we're going to work on phase 3, which is the final draft. Okay, but this week, guys, that's kind of looking ahead. But this week we are drafting a plan for this assignment. We're figuring out how we're going to get from point A to point B. Okay, so we need a detailed plan. So when you're creating a presentation, the most important thing to do is plan. And by doing so, you'll get this opportunity to really fully craft your story. And we talked a little bit about the basics of what's included in a great story. And that's a clear beginning, middle, and an end. In your planning assignment, you'll also be identifying your audience and how you might best communicate your important ideas to them. I also want you to start thinking about what tools you're going to use and how you're going to deliver this presentation. So I know it sounds like a lot, but that's why we're doing it now. We're getting all of these questions answered this week with our planning assignment that we'll be working on, okay? So let me give you a snapshot of everything that you have due this week. All right, so this is our week 2, and as you can see, you've got 4 items that you need to accomplish before the due date of Sunday, January 14th at 11:59 p.m. So right now we are doing the 2.1 Go-To Training live session. All of you guys that are in here for the live session, again, thank you for taking the time out of your busy days. Aziz was just driving. I hope you pulled over and you're not driving and watching this anymore. But if you guys can't make it to the live session, it's okay. I am recording it, and I will have the link posted within the next couple of hours after the conclusion of the live session and have that available to you. And even if you did attend the live session and you want to reference back to certain items, you're more than welcome to do that as well. I'll provide the link to everyone. So that's the 2.1, and you need to go back into the platform once you've watched the live or the recorded session and say that you have completed this assignment. Mark it as completed. Okay. The 2.2 I'll go over in a minute. The 2.3 is the emotional storytelling discussion, and I've received a couple of emails from you guys that you've begun working on this, which is wonderful. You're getting ahead of the game. But there are 2 due dates again for the 2.3 assignment. The initial post is actually going to be due on Thursday. The platform says Wednesday, but I give you an extra day. So you will be due on Thursday, and your classmate replies are due on Sunday. Okay, so there's 2 due dates for the 2.3 emotional storytelling discussion. And then finally, the 2.4 planning a presentation assignment. Your big one, 20% of your grade is due on Sunday the 14th. Okay, so let's go into a little bit more detail with these assignments. All right, so we are actually going to start looking into our other textbook this week, and that is going to be Slideology. You guys really focused mainly last week on the chapters in Resonate, and now we're going to start pulling in some information about Slideology, okay? Slideology is all about the aesthetics of the slides, okay? How to communicate with your audience visually as well, because we'll be creating for the final project an audio and visual presentation. We're going to combine both of them. So start reading the chapters in Slideology, chapter 12, 1, 2, 5, and 9, and then you only have to cover chapter 9 in Resonate. I know it's kind of bouncing around, but try to keep in that order and read the chapters that are laid out for you here in week number 2. So last week, you only had to mark this assignment as complete. But this week here in week number 2, I'm going to ask you to do something a little bit extra. So once you've completed the required readings, make sure you also add a post discussing one new piece of information that you have learned this week from the readings. So once you've made that post within the platform, it'll show that you have successfully completed this activity. Okay, that's the 2.2 reading. You need to write a post in here in order to get credit for that assignment. All right, the 2.3 emotional storytelling discussion. So this one is great. I love this week. Actually, it lets me get to kind of know you guys on a personal level because you're sharing a personal story with all of us, okay? So the 2.3 discussion assignment is 5% of your total grade. And you will see within the platform that I've included my own example of this project. It's me just kind of talking into my laptop camera about the song The Dance by Garth Brooks, and I recorded that about a year ago. But you can kind of see what it is that I'm expecting. I also have another student example that I will be sharing with you guys in my follow-up announcement. She was in my class last month, and she just really struck me, and I asked her for permission to share her initial post, and she graciously told me I could share that with you guys. So you'll have some examples before moving into your own initial post. But really, guys, this week with the emotional storytelling discussion, I want you to get comfortable using a microphone and using your own voice as a tool in your delivery, okay? Because you're going to be delivering your message for the final project verbally. There is that audio requirement in there. So I want you guys this week to start working with the power of your voice. So for the 2.3 emotional storytelling discussion, this will be an audio visual project, but I'm mainly focused on your vocals. I really want you learning how powerful your voice truly is. The visuals for this assignment are truly kind of complimentary. I'm glad that you've included them, but I'm not really grading on that aspect. It's more so about how you're telling your story. So what I would like you guys to do is, here's another TED Talk, is watch this short TED Talk from Julian Treasure. I've used this in my classes for years, and I think it's very powerful. And he talks about something called the Hail method and the items in your vocal toolbox. So you need to be sure that you've watched the TED Talk here, and it will tell you all about that. So I really want you to incorporate those 2 items into your emotional storytelling discussion, okay? So make the Hail method and the vocal toolbox come to life with your voice as you are delivering this message. All right, so here's what I want you guys to do is on the 2.3 assignment, you will click on the instructions and you also have access to the rubric, which I'm going to show you in a minute. And then on page 3, it shows you ways to create your audio-visual project. So I know that you guys all have different capabilities at this point, but if you're struggling at all with this assignment, I need you to reach out to me as soon as possible so we can try and work around this. But most of you guys have a smartphone with a recording app, and that can work just fine if you wanted to do it that way. But you will see in my own example that I recorded myself taking a quick time snippet video, and I could have easily have done that with my cell phone as well. So I know most of you guys have that capability. If you don't, please reach out to me as soon as possible. All right, so for the instructions, there's a lot of information on this page. So on the left side and the right side, I'm going to kind of break this down into 2 different slides here. So these are the instructions, and I'll first go over the initial post and what I'm looking for. All right, so for this discussion, I want you guys to really bring the concepts of the HAIL method, which stands for honesty, authenticity, integrity, and love, and the vocal toolbox, as described by Julian Treasure. I want you to bring this to life in your own emotional storytelling assignment, okay? The vocal toolbox includes things like register, timbre, pace, pitch, volume, prosody, all of those great different ranges that you have with your voice. You want to avoid a flat, monotone delivery with this. So some students, actually, it takes them a couple of times to practice this out. I've seen some students, I don't know if they're joking or not, but they're like, this is my 50th take on this. I don't want you guys to go to that extreme, but yes, this is going to take some practice, especially if you're not used to using your voice as a tool for the delivery of information, okay? So again, visit that TED Talk by Julian Treasure and make sure that you're including the concepts of the Hale method and the vocal toolbox within your own initial post. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to find your favorite piece of art or media. And I want this to be the subject, really, of the emotional storytelling discussion. And as I told you guys, I used the example of The Dance by Garth Brooks, okay? A lot of students use music, movies, video games. I have quite a bit of video games. It could be a photograph. It could be a sculpture, a poem, a painting, a book, some kind of art or media that you feel an emotional connection to, okay? I would like that to be the subject for the emotional storytelling discussion, okay? So once you pick that, Jacob is saying Game of Thrones. Yes, you may use Game of Thrones if you would like to. So once you've chosen your subject, give me 1 second, guys, to go through the instructions and I'll answer individual questions. But tattoos, okay, Anthony, I'm good with that one. Let's see what you do with the tattoo. I'm curious about that one. That is a work of art. So I want you to create a 2 to 3 minute audio visual presentation, and I want you to include the 4 prompts that you see here in this orange box, okay? I want you to address all 4 of these prompts within that 2 to 3 minute audio visual presentation that you're going to give, okay? So I want you to answer the following questions in your initial post. When did you first encounter this work of art? What emotional effect did it have on you? Why is it your favorite? And what does this work inspire you to do? Okay, so you should really kind of think about the responses to these 4 questions before you begin recording, okay? My suggestion is practice a couple of times before you actually begin recording. You probably are gonna stop and start a couple of times because none of us like to hear our own voice at first, but then we get used to it and we become more and more comfortable with it. Casey is asking, can you make a YouTube video for this? Yes, Casey, you can do that. And that kind of segues into a question that normally comes up. If you guys want to appear on camera, I am perfectly fine with that. It is not required though, okay? The only part required in this is that I hear you speaking, okay? So there needs to be that audio component. But if you are feeling comfortable or if you're trying to push yourself even further out of your box, just to kind of just move forward, I absolutely encourage you to start working with being on camera if you want to. I will say this though, guys, if you're going to be on camera, think about your audience, all right? Think about what your audience is going to see. So think about your background. And do you really want your audience to see your crazy, messy room with all this stuff and laundry piled all behind you? So try to make it as streamlined and clutter-free and distraction-free as possible. So if you want to do that, I invite you to do it, but it is not required. For the visual portion, you could always include an image of the subject of your emotional storytelling assignment. It could be a photo of the tattoo that Anthony is referring to. It could be a picture that you've taken with your cell phone of a painting or whatever it happens to be. Or you can put your own picture up in the platform, okay? So really, guys, I'm listening to your voices. My feedback will be about your voice. It'll be about, you could really work a little bit more on projecting your voice a little bit louder or using a little bit more variety in the pacing, talking a little bit quicker, talking a little bit slower to add more variety as you're delivering your message, okay? So I'm really hyper-focused on the verbal delivery, but if you want to go that extra mile and include yourself in a video, you're more than welcome to do it. However, it is not required. Again, the length of the initial post should be 2 to 3 minutes. So please, guys, if you're given a time requirement, please try to adhere to that time requirement as much as possible. So that is going to be the initial post, all right? That is due on Thursday before midnight. So you also have the other component, which is the reply post to 2 of your classmates, all right? So you guys started working with discussion boards and the RISE model last week. So I want you to bring those items back in here with the week 2 discussion board as well. So I want you to make at least 2 reply posts to 2 different classmates. And you must use the prompts that are listed here on the right side of the screen, okay? So the reply should address these two items. Explain how the post used effective communication tools. I would like you to tell your classmate, hey, you were very authentic when you were speaking about this image that you saw, or this painting that you were talking about, okay? Specifically mention some of those concepts from the vocal toolbox and the Hale method. And then number 2, describe the reaction you had when you listened to your classmate's story. Provide details explaining why you had that reaction, okay? So be sure that you've not only done a great initial post, but you've also provided great feedback for your classmates as well. I highly encourage you to interact with more than 2 of your classmates, but 2 is the absolute requirement for this one with the reply posts. All right, so page number 3 of the instructions again goes over how to create the audiovisual project, okay? So as Casey mentioned, can I make a YouTube video for this? That's one of the options on there. Be sure that the link that you provide to YouTube is either unlisted or public. If it's set to private, we can't view it, and of course I can't grade it, and that's going to be a problem. So be sure that your privacy settings allow us to be able to view your assignment if you are using YouTube or another site that you're hosting your video on, okay? You could also do the audio over images. Adobe Spark is a great option that you guys can use. They have the video option where you can record your voice directly into the program if you would like to. So that is an option. PowerPoint and Keynote also have recording options in there, but be sure that I can hear you with this assignment here. Okay, so I'm getting a question. Pepe, you were asking to speak to me. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you right now. Oops. Go ahead, Pepe.
Okay, I had this question.
Mm-hmm.
What I was thinking is I would do a game, and I have this streaming software I want to test. So could I make a local recording of gameplay while I use commentary?
So you're going to be playing the game as your visual, and then you're going to be talking and responding to the prompts as you're playing the game. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. And it just needs to be between 2 to 3 minutes in length.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right, Nick, I see your hand. I'm coming to you. Hey, Nick.
Hey, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. My question was, since he was talking about gaming,
Yeah.
can I go back and commentary a performance of mine?
What do you mean a performance?
I do lighting and visual
Okay.
For entertainment,
Okay.
and I have a lot of video recordings, actually a lot of YouTube video recordings from other people on whatnot, so I could go back and commentary on that. I'm not sure. I mean, it was just something that's interesting to me.
Yeah, I think that would be fine. I don't see a problem with that. Normally, I ask you guys to pick someone else's work that you're talking about and how it's
I
inspired.
could do that too.
And that's fine too. But if you wanted to include your own, kind of your own way of how you've interacted with that, I think that's fine as well.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Okay, guys, so while I'm looking at hands, do I have any other questions that I could address for you all about the 2.3 assignment? Not seeing any at this point. So I wanted to go over the rubric with you guys, and then we'll move on to the planning assignment. But if you have a question come up, go ahead and put it into the chat box, if you will. All right, so for the 2.3 emotional storytelling discussion, this is the grading rubric that I will be using. So you guys have access to this prior to even submitting and looking at the assignment. So use this to your advantage. So if something is missing or clearly not done to the exemplary status, I can't assign that grade for this particular assignment. Okay, so this is how I come to your final grades. So for instance, for the content, I need you to be very clear about the work of art. Like, you need to be very clear about what it is that you're speaking about. You also need to be sure that you've addressed all of the prompts that are listed in the assignment instructions as well, okay? The contribution to the community or the learning community, this is where those 2 reply posts are going to come into play. So if you have a phenomenal initial post, but you don't interact at all with your classmates, that is going to be an automatic 30-point deduction, which gives you a 70 for this assignment, which is a D. And it pains me to assign that grade because you haven't interacted with your classmates, okay? Also be sure that those responses are addressing those 2 prompts that I just went over as well. You're not just saying, great job on this assignment. That's not giving your classmate any feedback, any constructive feedback whatsoever, okay? So be sure you're using that RISE model and that you've addressed those 2 prompts that I talked about just a couple of minutes ago. So there's the content, the rationale, the contribution to the learning community, and then on the second page here is all about your delivery, okay? So this is worth 10 points of the 100 total. So this is where I'm listening to your voice, okay? For the exemplary status here, or the exemplary column, I'm looking for you guys to have a lot of confidence as you're speaking. Very clear articulation, enthusiasm, and energy if it pertains to the story. It needs to be conveyed through your voice, all right? So you need to have energy, clear articulation, variety in your voice, variety in your speaking rate as well, and make sure that volume is loud and clear so that I can hear you speaking. Also, this is where timing is going to count. The presentation is within the allotted time, which is 2 to 3 minutes. So guys, really for this one, if you're just under 2 minutes or you're just over 3 minutes, not a huge deal. But oftentimes I have a lot of students submit initial posts that are 5, 6, 7, sometimes 10, 15 minutes in length. That's well over the allotted 2 to 3 minutes. And that's where deductions will start to come into play for timing. Okay, you really, again, guys, this is not the only class where you have presentations, and time is going to be a big factor in a lot of your presentations. Not only this one, but also for the final presentation here in creative presentation. So you need to start getting used to abiding by time constraints as well. All right. So again, that's it for the 2.3. Let's back up one. Do you have any questions for me about this particular assignment before we move into the 2.4? Any questions? Okay, Pepe, I'm coming to you again. Let's see, let me unmute you. Okay, go ahead.
Quick question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how good is this mic?
It sounds great. You're loud and clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought I need to replace my headset.
I think I'm hearing you loud and clear. I'm not hearing any distractions. Nick in the chat box is saying it sounds good. So I think you're doing just fine with that microphone.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. All right. Rakia, I'm coming to you. You there? Okay, now your microphone.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. You there?
Can you hear me?
You're kind of breaking in and out.
Oh. Am I clear now?
You are. Yes. What's your question?
I was wondering if there was a technique on how to fight not liking your voice in your presentation, because there might be multiple repeats for me if I'm not liking how it's sounding.
You know what? I hate my own voice, and it took me a hell of a long time to get used to, like, oh my gosh, I don't sound like that, really. And then after a while, it's just like anything. Practice makes the newness and the odd sound normal to you. So actually, the more that you practice, the more that you get used to your voice, and the more that you aren't cringing when you hear a voicemail or you hear yourself on a YouTube video, and you've got a couple classmates saying the same thing. So it's definitely not anything that you're dealing with on your own, but practice does help quite a bit. So I would say if you're feeling a little hesitant, just start talking to yourself in the car. Maybe just put the recording put your phone to the side and record your voice for a little bit. And get used to your voice, and then start working with those different items of the vocal toolbox and the Hale method as well. It does take some time. Give it some time.
Okay.
With it. Okay. But you have a really nice voice.
Okay.
I love your voice.
Yeah, I've been told that, but I guess from what other people hear, they hear nice. When I hear it, it's just, oh my.
Isn't that funny how that works? How we sound, we just think we sound completely different from when we're talking than when we're being recorded. But I promise you, you have a lovely voice. Use it. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Casey, I see your hand up. I'm coming to you. Hey, Casey.
Hey, yeah, actually, it wasn't more. It was more or less actually adding to what she was asking.
Okay.
Actually, you just really want to get used to talking in general, not really so much of listening to the pitch of your voice, but more or less just not stuttering. And yeah, it does take a lot of practice, but really, as long as you're not stuttering, that's all you need.
And I think that's a good point that you make, Casey. And I think sometimes we the nerves get the best of us and we start stuttering or we start using words like and like and and we're just trying to give ourselves just a quick second to catch up. Start learning how to embrace the silence as well, giving yourself permission to be quiet for a moment and catch up without stuttering or without using the filler words. So I think those are great points, Casey. Thank you. Okay, Emily, I'm coming to you. Hey, Emily.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. One other thing to add on to that as well, what I found helps me is to write down exactly what I want to say and space it out like in paragraphs or bullet points, so that way I'm more of reading off of it as well as like a visual to look at, so I'm not going throughout the whole thing. So.
And I think that's great advice as well, is really just getting your script written out, practicing your script, figuring out what words might be tripping you up a little bit. Maybe you need to make some revisions there, but don't do it off the cuff. Really have your script written out and practiced a couple of times before you even hit the record button, so you're familiar with the material. And this goes for the final presentation or any speech that you would deliver. You want to be sure that you have run through it quite a few times in your head and out loud before even doing the recording. Good advice there. Thank you, Emily.
Uh-huh.
Okay, Casey, I saw your hand come up and then go away. So any other questions, guys? Okay, great. I'm glad you guys are finding this advice helpful, and thank you guys for interacting and coming over the microphones and speaking to your classmates to offer your advice as well. Thank you guys. So if anything comes up about the 2.3 assignment, send me a message or we'll talk about it at the end of our session. But I want to spend a lot of time on our planning assignment today because there is a lot of information that goes into it. I have examples to show you. And then I have a couple of demonstrations that I want to show you as well. So this is your big assignment this week. This is the 2.4 planning a presentation assignment. It's worth 20% of your grade. So it's a big one. So you need to be sure that you have this completed by Sunday, January 14th, 11:59 p.m. So guys, again, I want to put a lot of emphasis on this one because this assignment is really essential for your success throughout the remainder of the month, okay? It's really kind of setting the foundation or the groundwork for your presentation. So the harder you guys work in this week, and I know there's a lot going on with the 2.3 initial post and this assignment at the same time and a shorter week, but the harder you guys work on the plans, the better position you're going to be in for weeks 3 and 4, which are coming up in the next 2 weeks, okay? So guys, really just kind of put your head down and work, and really set yourself up for success here in week number 2. It is an intense week, but that hard work will definitely pay off for you in the long run. All right, so I'm going to go over the instructions. They're quite detailed, so I break them down into different sections, and I'll show you guys some examples as well. But overall, again, guys, you're not necessarily creating a presentation this week. Instead, we're creating a detailed plan for your final assignment of this course, okay? And as I've mentioned a couple of times, the final assignment is called the Brand Yourself presentation, and we'll talk a little bit about branding towards the end of our session today. But the idea here is that you are picturing yourself as a recent graduate from your degree program, okay? I know you're in month number 1. I know you're in creative presentation. You started a week ago, but this is a very forward-thinking assignment. A lot of students really say, you know what, this made me think about my future quite a bit. And I really appreciate that. So really kind of take it for any, if nothing else, it really kind of gets you thinking in detail about what the future holds for you after your time here at Full Sail. Okay. So you're going to picture yourself as a recent graduate and you're moving on to the job market, right? You're wanting to put yourself in your industry. So you're going to be pitching your future self to either a prospective employer, a specific company, or if you wanted to take the entrepreneur route, which a lot of you guys are doing, which is wonderful, pitching yourself to a particular client that you would like to work with in your industry after graduation. Okay, so that's going to be the gist of your Brand Yourself presentation. It is a 3 to 4 minute audio visual presentation that is due coming up later on in week 4. But in week number 2, where we're at right now, we're creating the plan to make that presentation, okay? So that's what we'll be working on this week. Again, as I said, it really sets up a nice foundation, the groundwork for you to build off of as you're working through the next couple of weeks in CRP. Okay, so what goes into your plan? Guys, I'm going to show you 2 examples in a couple of minutes of what this can look like, but there isn't really a set feel or look about this. As long as you have all of the required information presented in an organized format, you will do fine. So a lot of you guys have very different processes when it comes to the planning phase. So you can do this in any way you like. So like Nancy Duarte talks about in Resonate, you could use the idea of the spark line. So maybe you want to try that. Some of you guys might like the mind mapping software that's out there. I'm not a huge fan of it when it comes to grading those mind maps, but it's definitely something that you could use to get started. You could easily, if you're a very linear thinker, use Microsoft Word as the program that you have out there. There is the idea of using Post-it notes and kind of having that kinesthetic learning where you're moving your ideas from place to place. There's a lot of very different ways to get started with this, but there isn't a particular or required format, look, or feel. I am looking for thorough, detailed information. I will say that, and I will show you guys examples as well. So guys, use this as your roadmap. Maps are specific, maps are detailed. Otherwise, you're probably not going to get to your final destination. You're probably going to be lost. Same with planning. It needs to be detailed and it needs to be specific, all right? So the more specifics that you can give to me for the presentation plans, the better feedback I can give to you as you go and start to create the first draft in week number 3. All right, so don't get overwhelmed by this page. This is the instructions page, and there's a lot of information that you need to include here. And what I've done is I've broken these sections out into their own individual slides, so I can really just go over these individually as it's not so overwhelming. But this is all of the instructions and everything that you need to include in the presentation planning assignment. All right, so let's first talk about the most important aspect of the presentation is going to be your hero, right? It's your audience. So in this week, I want you guys to figure out who is your specific audience, okay? So I told you can take 2 different routes. You can either take the route of wanting to gain employment with a company, or if you're an entrepreneur, and kind of having a contract or having some kind of working relationship with a client. In either situation, you need to have a specific audience, okay? That audience needs to be as narrowed as it possibly can be, all right? If you're going for the employment route, that's usually pretty easy because you've chosen a company. So gamers, it could be Blizzard, it could be, all of the different ones that are out there. If you're going for the entrepreneur route, it's a little bit more difficult because you want to work with a lot of different companies or clients, okay? But say, for instance, you're going into graphic design, all right? You would pitch yourself to a graphic design, company, and you really need to figure out who your audience is going to be. Pepe said, let's all agree not to go to EA. EA is actually my example on how to research your audience, so you'll probably just have to look off to the side as I use that as an example, just because they're here in Orlando. But guys, start thinking about your target audience, all right? And you need to do some research into your audience. And as I said just a couple seconds ago about EA, I'll show you some examples of how to do that with some screenshots here. But you want to do some research, investigate your audience to find out what is important to them. So you need to figure out what it is to, what the job openings look like. What are the requirements for this particular opening? And I'll show you how to do that. All right, so next is going to be your true message or your big idea, right? So this is the second part of the planning assignment, is expressing exactly why it is that you're doing this presentation. So you guys really need to be able to clearly define this. This is your purpose. This is the purpose of the entire presentation, all right? So get these items nailed down before moving forward with the additional items of the planning phase. So what exactly is your big idea, your true message, or your purpose of this presentation? You also need to think about something called your star moment or star moments, all right? And that is going to be something the audience will always remember, something they'll always remember. Those are your star moments. And there's 5 different types of star moments that are listed in Duarte's text, all right? So I want you guys to think about, what are your star moments going to be? You need to identify at least one of the 5 star moments that I'm discussing here right now. So first would be a memorable dramatization, all right? So this could be tough to do sometimes because you're not in a live setting, it's a video. But think about, like Steve Jobs demonstrating, the first iPhone or a touchscreen or an iPad or something like that. And that should be maybe, if you wanted to use a small prop or have a quick demonstration, that would be a memorable dramatization. So that's one of the 5 different types of star moments. Next would be a repeatable sound bites, okay? So these kind of give people like a rallying cry, or, they're kind of headlines, or think of slogans, if you will. A lot of companies have different slogans, like McDonald's, I'm loving it. Anthony's saying, please hire me, is his rallying cry for a star moment. But think of like slogans and things that are easy to repeat, that you want your audience to remember about you. So I can hopefully give you an example of that with some of the examples that I've provided in the last couple weeks, or in the last week that I've sent out to you guys. This is one that more than likely you guys are going to use, and that's evocative visuals, because you do need to include a visual aspect into your presentation. And of course, we're going to talk about visuals all next week in week number 3. But that's the emotional part of the presentation, is really, or the visual part of the presentation is really an emotional link to your audience, okay? You want to use images as an emotional link. So if you plan to include visuals, which you should be, that can be one of your star moments. All right, this is also another star moment that I think that most of you guys will be using, because I want you to use this in the very beginning of your presentation, and that's emotive storytelling, okay? Stories are what connects us as human beings. You're adding, again, a level of emotion in there to make the story memorable, okay? So many of you guys will use the evocative visuals and the emotional, or the emotive storytelling. Your last one here is shocking statistics. This one isn't my favorite in this type of presentation. People do have a tendency to kind of go overboard when it comes to using statistics and numbers. And when they do that, the information gets less and less important or impactful, okay? So if you do plan to use a shocking statistic, use just 1 or 2 to really get your point across, and then don't include any more, because all of a sudden these numbers don't mean anything here. They lose their impact, all right? So there is a great TED Talk, yet another TED Talk, that I can refer you to. It's called, what did she call this one? Amanda Palmer's TED Talk. And it's one that I actually use in week number 3. It's called The Art of Asking, I believe. But she uses all 5 star moments in great, and just visually showing all 5 of these star moments and how she incorporates all of them. So I really highly suggest that if you don't want to watch it this week, if you want to wait until next week, that's fine. But before week 3 starts, I highly recommend that you check out Amanda Palmer's TED Talk, The Art of Asking. And she just incorporates all 5 of these star moments beautifully throughout her TED Talk. Okay, so you must identify at least one of these star moments and how you plan to incorporate that into your presentation. All right, next is all about the presentation flow, all right? And the presentation flow is going to be organized into 3 main sections: the beginning, the middle, and the end, okay? And I really, guys, I want you to focus on having a great amount of organization for your message, all right? An organized message is one that is clear and it's easily remembered, okay? So be sure that I can clearly identify your beginning, your middle, and your end as you're creating the presentation flow. So I asked you guys prior to coming to the week 2 go-to session to watch this TED Talk from Simon Sinek. We really do love TED Talks around here, don't we? So Simon Sinek is a fantastic speaker. I have used this TED Talk in my speech classes prior to coming to Full Sail, and I think it really gets people thinking. And he's talking about something called the golden circle, all right? And this is kind of the concept that I wanted to bring in from his TED Talk so you guys can tie it to your own presentation flow, your own beginning, middle, and end. So Ashley, you watched it. So any of you guys that have watched this one, tell me one thing that really stood out to you as Simon Sinek was talking. What is something that stands out to you? What is it that you could pull forward and maybe bring into your own presentations? If you wanted to answer in the chat box, what is something that stood out to you? Anybody? We're not seeing anything come through. One thing, guys, that stood out to me when we were talking about the rallying cry is his repeatable soundbite. Okay, so Simon Sinek says multiple times in this TED Talk, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Okay, Ashley just said the same thing in the chat box as well. That is a phenomenal example of a repeatable soundbite. Okay, so if you have something similar to that, I mean, I've watched this so many times, but I haven't even watched it in about a year, but it still stands out to me. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Okay, and so think about that. What is your own why? And that is how you're going to connect with your audience. Okay, so guys, the ones that you were saying that you haven't watched it yet, you'll get it done today. I highly recommend that you do it. Really gets you thinking about why it is that you're on this path that you're on. Okay, so definitely go ahead and watch that. It's about 20 minutes long, so make time for that. But in this, kind of as a general just synopsis here, Sinek talks about the order of the golden circle. Okay, so he starts talking about companies who start with their why at the core of what they do. Why is it that they are doing what they're doing? Those are the companies and the people that are most successful. And that's when he talked about people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This will help you guys to hook your audience and get them wanting to know more about you when you're starting to talk about your own personal why. Okay, so think of it. If you're thinking about a target, a bullseye, if you will, at the very core, at the very center is the why. All right, then you move out into the next section, and that's going to be the next section is how. How is it that you plan to accomplish your why? How is it that you plan to do that? And we'll talk about that for your own presentation flow in a moment. And lastly, at the very outer edges of that bullseye, you'll talk about what you will provide and what you want, what you think that the audience should do next. All right, so that's the idea of the golden circle: the why, the how, and the what. And I want you guys to tie that into your beginning, middle, and end. Okay, so that's going to be the organizational flow of your own script for this presentation. So when you guys are thinking about this as kind of a bigger picture idea, here's what I want you to think about for your own brand yourself presentation. I want you to think of this as a preview or an invitation to an interview to further discuss who you are as a professional and your qualifications, all right? Kind of the trailer to a movie. They give the highlights, they intrigue you, they bring you in, they get you to spend the money at the movie theater, but they don't show everything, right? Same thing here. I want you to really hook your audience. Tell them who you are as a professional. Give them highlights of what you can do, but get them to the point where they want to know more. All right. So this is going to be just 3 to 4 minutes. You don't want to include everything that you've ever done, but you definitely want to hook them in. All right, so keep the idea of the golden circle in mind as you're crafting your own presentation flow or the script to your presentation, okay? So back to the idea of the why, the how, and the what. Why? Why are you inspired to pursue the career that you're going after? Again, you guys are making a huge commitment right now, financial commitment, time commitment for your own particular path. Why are you on this path? That's the story that I want you to use to connect with your audience. Next, you'll go into how. This is the middle section of your presentation. How is it that you're uniquely qualified to be in your industry? And I'm going to show you how to do some degree research in a couple of minutes and guide you through that through the Full Sail website. Lastly is what? What is it that you want to accomplish in your field, and what do you want your audience to do next? Okay, so let's take a look at these in a little bit more detail, because this is going to really be the meat of your presentation planning assignment. All right, so in the beginning, tie this to the why, all right? Or if you're using the idea of the spark line, what is? This is where I want you to quickly resonate with your audience, okay? Consider, who are you and why are you on this current path? What drew you to this audience, and how does your story align with theirs? That's where you need to do some research on your particular audience and figure out how it is that you're going to be able to connect with them, okay? So that's going to be the beginning section. So start thinking of how it is that you want to connect with your audience. Next is going to be the middle section. If you're using the sparkline idea, what could be, or this is going to be the how section. So this is where you show your audience what you plan to bring to the table, okay? So I'm going to guide you guys in a minute through researching your own degree program, okay? Imagining some of the projects you're going to be creating and showing the audience how you are qualified for this particular position, okay? Demonstrating your personal brand and your abilities. Lastly, you want to talk about the end of the presentation or the call to action. This is also the what portion of the golden circle, all right? So the call to action is important. You need to leave the audience with what they should do next, okay? And that is going to be what your call to action comes to play and comes to be here at the ending of the presentation. More than likely, you're asking them to connect with you further. You're explicit about this. You're telling them, I would love to hear from you. Please contact me for an interview or a meeting or to discuss this opportunity further. And then you probably want to show your contact information so that they can fulfill that request, okay? So a call to action is kind of giving the audience an assignment of what to do next. They should not come to the end of your presentation and say, well, now what do we do? I can't figure out how to get in touch with this person. I don't know what they want me to do next. You need to be very explicit about that at the ending. So wrap up the presentation and give that call to action to the audience. All right, here's what I'm looking for with the grading rubric for the presentation plans, all right? So first is going to be the content, all right? Have you met all of the requirements of the assignment, okay? I just went over all of the requirements. You need to identify the audience, the big idea, your star moment, and start laying out your presentation flow, the beginning, the middle, and the end. Okay, that's going to be all of the requirements. So if you haven't met something, or if a couple of pieces are missing, I can't give you an exemplary for that category. Also, critical thinking. Make sure that you guys have depth and specifics and detail, okay? Again, like a roadmap, you need to be specific so that I can have a picture of where it is that you're going and I can provide you feedback as you move into the first draft. Relevance. You need to start pulling in materials from the textbook, from the lecture, from the TED Talks, okay, and explicitly stating those within the assignment to complete that relevance section. And then lastly is going to be the mechanics, all right? Mechanics, it's going to be the no, lowercase i's all by themselves, lonely and sad. And then the capitalization and punctuation and grammar and spelling and all of that needs to be take a quick overview, run the spell check, run the grammar check prior to turning in the assignment. It is a written assignment. So you need to be sure that that mechanics portion is correct. Anthony, you want me to explain the relevance part again? Yes. So for the relevance part, I would like you to pull in the related course material. We're going to be talking about branding in a couple of minutes, and we'll be talking about your own personal brand and how to create that. You might want to bring in the ideas from the golden circle. So I would like to see some of those concepts that we've been talking about here in the go-to session and from the readings, pulling that into the assignment and showing that you're pulling it all together for one cohesive assignment. Does that make sense, Anthony? Great. Okay. All right. So I'm going to get out of my keynote for a moment and show you guys a little bit of information here about how to research your degree program. Okay. So as you can see, I'm on the Full Sail website. All right. And this is where a lot of this very forward thinking, I haven't accomplished all this stuff yet. All of this information is going to come into play. And this is kind of what I'm expecting you to do when it comes to researching your degree program. So again, this is the fullsail.edu website. And at the bottom here, you can see all of the different degree programs that Full Sail offers. Okay, so for today, Pepe, you're asking, what are the specs? I'm not sure what you're talking about with the specs, if you could be more specific. And I'll address that when I'm done with this portion here. But today I'm going to pick on the Media and Communications degree program here. All right, so say for instance, you're in the Media and Communications Bachelor's program, all right? So this is the field or the industry that you're going into, and you've picked your audience and you want to give them a good idea of what it is that you're qualified to do, how you're qualified for this position, all right? And this can be done for any of the different degree programs, okay? So I would click on the Media and Communications Bachelor's, scroll down a bit, and you can see that you have a full listing of each course, all right? And this is for each and every one of the degree programs, okay? So I'm just kind of giving you a demonstration here of what you can find out about your own degree programs, okay? So as you can see, here's the course schedule. We're all here in month number 1 at Creative Presentation. So you've got a ways to go. I'm actually gonna go to online since we're online here. So let's see, say for instance, media, we want to talk, you want to just to let your audience know what you've learned in new media tools, okay? And each and every one of these courses gives a brief overview of what it is that you can expect to learn throughout your time in that course, okay? So here, students will gain an understanding of the unique possibilities and challenges of new media by learning the technology, techniques, methods of storytelling on multimedia platforms, and on and on and on. And that's something that you can pull into your presentation plan in that middle section, which talks about how it is that you're qualified, okay? So if that's something that your potential employer or client is looking for, you can say, well, in my new media tools class, I learned how to do this and this and this, okay? So it really relates back to showing your audience how you're qualified. So I would say just investigate maybe 2 or 3 of these courses, all right? So let's do another one. Editing for the web. Again, very specific items that you will be learning in this particular course and how it would relate. You need to figure out how it would relate back to your audience as well, okay? So just kind of do a little bit of research into your own degree program. Look into these courses and say, if you wanted to apply to EA, which a lot of you guys made fun of, if you wanted to apply to EA, go to the game design degree program and look at the courses that you will be taking over the next several years and see how that would relate back to what it is that that employer would be looking for, okay? So that's just a very basic, quick way to figure out how it is that you will be qualified for that particular position that you're going for, okay? So any questions about how to do the degree research? Pretty quick, pretty painless, but I do expect that you have those specifics included within your presentation plans. Pepe, I'm not sure what you mean about the specs of my PC. Yeah, I'm on a Mac. Casey, you're saying the project portfolio courses are going to be the courses that will have relevance to our planned career. Yeah, Casey, those are kind of hard because there's always, they're kind of building on each other, those portfolio courses, but once you've moved through those, you're going to have a lot of great work to show. It's just at this point, those are hard to to pull in there because I mean, you could definitely research that and use that if you want to, but maybe some of the other more specific course material might be more relevant. It's kind of dependent upon your degree program. Okay, so any questions about the research on the degree programs? Again, it's at the Full Sail website, thefullsail.edu, just the homepage. And at the bottom, guys, you have all of the different degree programs. So start, moving through the different programs and start researching a bit into your different courses that you will be taking. All right, so I also want to show you, here's the EA section, which y'all made fun of, but it's in Orlando, so I picked it. So I did some screenshots. These are about a year old, so this might look completely different now. But I wanted to show you how to just go to a company website and do a bit of research on the company, on their culture, on what it is that they're looking for. And I really liked this one because, as you can see, they had a whole section under here for students. And under here, they had a university grads option as well. So that's why I thought this was a good idea to show you guys how research can be done from the web so you can find out quite a bit about the company. So forget about the company for right now, but really kind of take these concepts and how I expect you to find out information about that particular employer or client that you'd like to work with in the future. So as I said, there's a university grads option here. I thought, well, that's great. That's exactly what I want my students to look at. They also have a why work here drop-down box, okay? That's a section where you could look into information about the culture of the company, all right? Culture of a company is hugely important because they're very different. I can tell you just, kind of in my industry, in education, the colleges that I came from, Seminole State, Valencia, are very, very different than Full Sail, as you can imagine. Totally different cultures. And you need to be sure that you want to work in that type of culture. You're going to be spending a ton of time and energy there. So you may as well want to like where it is that you're working. So research some culture information about the company. But going back to the EA example, down here at the bottom, they had all of these different links that they could take you to, the technical side, the creative portion, the business side. So you could really start to do some investigative work here about where it is that you want to go with that particular company, what it is that they're looking for, okay? So on the next slide, I looked at design, okay? I looked at design and I looked at their qualifications, all right? And this is where it's going to be helpful to pair it with your degree research, okay? So for instance, with EA, what they're looking for is someone with a BA in game design or a related field, okay? So obviously that's something for the purposes of this assignment that you've accomplished, right? They want someone well-versed in a range of 2D and 3D graphics and animation packages such as 3D Studio Max or Maya. So if that's something that you've learned in one of your design courses, absolutely tell them that because that's what they're looking for. It's all about connecting with your audience. So you need to research your audience as much as possible. Get to know your audience, okay? So that's where I want you really to start making those connections with your research, getting to know your audience, getting to know what the qualifications are, and matching it with the research that you're doing on your degree program, okay? All right, so a couple of things that I want you to keep in mind, kind of like a checklist, if you will, of things that I want you to consider. Number one, guys, who is your audience? I really need you to be very specific about who your audience is. If you're looking for employment, name that company. Tell me about the company. Research the company as best you can, all right? If it's a client, if you're looking to work as an entrepreneur and pull people on as a client, again, you still need to be able to pitch to a very specific audience, okay? So try to do as best you can to narrow that audience and make sure that your message is tailored to that particular audience. All right, what is the presentation flow? That's going to be your beginning, your middle, and your end, tied to the idea of the golden circle, which is the why, the how, and the what. So you need to have those three clear sections of your presentation flow. What tools do you need? Okay, so start thinking about what presentation tools do you need to work with? Okay, a lot of you guys are going to be using PowerPoint. That's fine. Some of you will be using Adobe Spark, which I highly encourage. Prezi, Keynote. If you wanted to create a video, you're more than welcome to do that. You're going to need a microphone. You're going to need to be able to learn how to combine the audio and the visual together for this presentation. Okay, so what tools are you going to need for this presentation? Think about your message, okay, or your call to action. What is it that makes you unique? Why should they hire you? Why should they invest their time and their energy into you? Okay, and also ask your audience what they should do as a result of seeing your presentation. What is the purpose? What are the results that you're looking for? I also want you to think of some obstacles, okay? Obstacles and challenges will always come up in any situation, okay? So anticipate that. Maybe it's a scheduling obstacle that you're having. Maybe it's a technology obstacle that you're having. What is it that you can do to become a problem solver, okay? Instead of just throwing up your hands and saying, I can't do this, this is in my way. Think of the potential challenges or obstacles that are coming up and how you plan to maneuver through them. Okay, so think about that. Try to be a little bit more forward thinking. And lastly, reflection. Reflect on the process. Okay, feedback. This is where feedback is highly important. Okay, feedback is what takes you to the next step. Feedback and reflection have you look back and say, you know what, I really wish I just put another hour into this. I would have really had that wrapped up. And make sure that you do that, okay? So look at the experience that you've gained from this opportunity. It is a learning opportunity, and move forward using that constructive feedback to help pull you into the next level, to make it even better than it is, okay? All right, so with the plans, guys, again, it is a written assignment. You're not creating a presentation this week. You're creating the plan, the base, the groundwork, the foundation work to start the creation of your audiovisual project, which will begin in week 3. But this week, it is a written assignment. I do want you to be sure that you have addressed all of those different sections that I've talked about in the instructions, okay? So it needs to be thorough, it needs to be complete, I need to see specific detail. I would say the more the better, all right? Keep this idea in mind. If you were to hand off your presentation plans to someone else, would they have a vision of what it is that you're trying to accomplish, or would they be lost? Would they have a ton of extra questions? And you want them, of course, to have some questions here, but you want them to have a clear vision of where you plan to go. And that's what I should have when I'm grading this, a clear vision of where it is that you plan to go with your presentation, okay? If you want a page amount, say you're working in Word, I would say at least 2 to 4 pages of content, okay? 2 to 4 pages of specific content, answering and responding to all of the different sections of this assignment, all right? So we'll pause here and see if you guys have any questions at this point about the planning assignment. Questions? Anything at all? Oh, good, Casey, I'm glad I answered your question. I like that you're going with 2. That made me laugh. Any other questions, complaints? No complaints. I mean, clarifications. Anything else I can answer for you? No complaining. Jason, I feel I have the cart way ahead of the horse. I have no idea where I want to be in a couple of years. This will be interesting. Jason, yes. I think that really is where a lot of students are like, look, lady, I just started this 1 week ago, and you want me to tell you where I'm going to be in 2.5, 3 years. Do the best that you can. Of course, things are going to change between now and then. I promise you I won't show up at graduation being like, look, this is what you said you were going to be. What are you doing? Of course, that's not going to happen. But it really does kind of just put you in the mindset of, all right, where am I going with this, right? So just, if you get some hiccups in there along the way, we'll work together on that. And like Jordan is saying, you were thinking the same thing. Just have a bit of a vision, have a bit of a plan, and move with it. Of course, I'm not going to be checking on that, but I want you guys to start thinking about how to brand yourself in your industry and how that starts at day number 1. It might not be something you consider all of the time, but really, truly creating your own brand is going to be something that is within your own control and something that you should be thinking about early on here. All right, let me scroll up here for a moment. Okay, Gerard, are there any visuals involved? Gerard, okay, so let me kind of two-part this response. For the presentation planning assignment, visuals are not required, but you're making the plans here. So eventually, when you create the first draft and the final draft of the Brand Yourself presentation, yes, that is when you're going to start pulling the visual aspect of the presentation into the Brand Yourself project. But for week 2, for the planning assignment, no, visuals are not required. They will be eventually down the line, though. Let's see. Christina, you crack me up. No complaining. That's definitely a mom statement. I can't tell you how many times I've said that in my life. Let's see what else. Okay, Emily, good question. My plan is to open a recording studio with my husband, so I'm not sure who my audience would be. Perfect example of being an entrepreneur and wanting to work with people as clients. So this comes up quite a bit in my past experience with students, and Christina answered this. Your audience is going to be, yes, musicians, but as you can see, that is a huge audience. So the more that you can narrow your audience, the better. What type of music is it that you really, that you're really targeting? What kind of musician? What age demographic? What location demographic is it that you're working with? What kind of artist or musician comes to mind as your vision, as to who it is that you would like to work with in your recording studio? Okay, so it might not be that you've got one particular artist in mind, but you really need to think of what that artist embodies. What kind of music do they produce, or what is it that they're looking for? Okay, so really start to narrow that audience as best as possible. That does get when it's a little bit tricky when you don't have a specific company that you're pitching yourself to, but you really need to narrow as much as possible. Okay, I'm still scrolling here, guys. Just give me a moment. Okay, so any other questions that I can answer about the planning assignment? And you guys, if you have very specific questions about your audience and your own particular path, sometimes it's best if we just kind of if we have a conversation, or if we go back and forth in a text or an email or something like that, because it just pertains to you. So if you wanted to further the conversation along, we can definitely do that. So any just generalized questions about the assignment? Okay, guys. So if something comes up, definitely ask me early in the week. I'm more than happy to chat with you guys. Look at what you've created so far. Again, if you guys have things that are turned in early, like say, for instance, this Friday, and you wanted my feedback and you wanted to make some revisions prior to the deadline, I am happy to do that. I just need to have that probably by noon on Friday in order to get that feedback and those revisions back to you, okay? But I'm happy to do that up until that deadline. So you guys can let me know if you want to do that. Excuse me. So I want to talk a little bit about branding. And we're really just going to kind of hit the surface of this. I mean, you could do an actual degree program in branding. So we just kind of hit the surface and what it is that embodies your own personal brand. What is it? So this is something that I think really warrants you thinking about very early on in your careers, in your education, in your industries, whatever it happens to be, because you want to have complete control over it. So your brand, Rakia, you're very excited about this, all right? So how would you guys right now define your personal brand? What is it that makes up your brand? When I say you want to protect your brand, what do I mean by that? What are you protecting? What are you creating? What are you molding and controlling? What is it that I'm talking about with your brand? Oftentimes, guys, it's going to be your professional persona or your reputation, all right? Your reputation in the industry as a professional, all right? Oftentimes, it's really tough to define what your brand is, especially so early on in the process. But sometimes it's comprised of quite a bit of different perceptions, all right? So say, for instance, Nick, since you were the last one that commented in the platform, if I said, Nick, bring your best friend to class. Bring your best friend to class. And I said, who is Nick Zentz? All right. Who is that? What would your best friend say about that? And of course, your best friend's perception would be a little bit different than your own perception. And that's what's important here. It's not just about you. It's about how others perceive you as well. Okay. So you have your own perception and you have the perception of others coming into play. And that might be a little bit different. They might be in conflict sometimes, but you want to be in control of your own personal brand. Okay. So for me as an educator, I've created a bit of my own brand, my own professional persona, if you will, over the past 5 years of educating at the college level, right? So there is this website talking about control over your brand, right? So there's this website called ratemyprofessor.com, and it's not really used much with Full Sail because you guys don't have a lot of control over who your instructors are. But as you can imagine, in many different colleges, that is how people they make their schedules. That's how they choose their instructors now. I wish I had this 20 years ago when I was in college, right? But I have no control over that. But I'm very aware that that website is hugely influential on who takes my classes, if my classes fill up, who I am as a professional, okay? Other instructors could see that. People that are above me as I'm working on promotions can also see that. So I want to be sure that my own brand is communicating exactly who I am, right? And I need to be aware of that because a lot of times, especially with the internet, we don't have control. So you want to be in control of your brand as much as possible. You want your online brand and your in-person brand, your reputation to match, okay, as best as possible, because that's the last thing you want is to, be hyped up online and then the person shows up and you can't fulfill all of those things that are out there according to your brand, all right? You need to be able to fulfill all of those ideals that are happening, all right? So when you start thinking of that, who is it that you want to be in your industry? Are you the guy or the girl that's dependable, that's reliable, that produces phenomenally creative work? Or are you someone that doesn't show up on time, doesn't turn in work on time, that could be lackluster with creativity, okay? Who is it that, who are you with your brand? And I want to give you guys an example of branding and kind of its power at times. And I want to give you a comparison of two different companies that really, they're kind of similar, but very, 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 very different. All right. So there is a coffee company, and I hate coffee. I hate it. It stinks and it tastes bad. But there is a coffee company that most of us could probably know just based on their logo, just based on the cup. You know exactly who I'm talking about. So why is it that most people would go and choose this coffee company, Starbucks, yes, Casey, that is probably 3 or 4 times as much as the McDonald's across the street, right? What is it about the Starbucks brand that brings people in there and gives people the latte factor, if you will, keeps people coming in there daily? Some people set up their offices in there. It's crazy, right? Why is it that people feel the need to do that as opposed to just running through the McDonald's across the street, saving money and saving time? Nick is saying it's status. All right, so that's an interesting one, status. What is it about the Starbucks brand that makes you feel something, okay? And Anthony is saying the way they sell themselves. It's just like, Nick is saying it's just like having a new iPhone, okay? You're walking around, with your Starbucks cup, right? It's a status thing, according to Nick here. Gerard's saying professionalism. Emily's saying, well, first off, Emily has a lot of feeling about this. Starbucks tastes better and the ambiance of the atmosphere. Okay, that's what I want to get into is the atmosphere, all right? What do you feel, all right? A lot of times your brand is how you make someone feel. What is it that you feel when you walk into a Starbucks? Emily loves coffee. Personalization, right? Anthony is saying the name on the cups, the fancy barista, the good cookies. Oftentimes they go to the extra mile to learn your name, learn your drink. You're feeling relaxed. You're feeling comfortable, feeling warm, fuzzy, like a library. All of these comments are great, guys. Do you feel that when you walk into a McDonald's? Aziz is saying uncomfortable. No, McDonald's is just McDonald's, right? So it's all about that brand, right? And they're very protective of that brand. And that brand is consistent from store to store to store because they want you to have that feeling when you walk into that particular Starbucks. Now, I can't stand, I just hate coffee, but I still, my friend and I will go and sit there for hours, and I'll get, stupidly, I'll get an ice water and a hot chocolate like an idiot. But she'll sit in there and have her coffee and work away, and we'll chat and we'll do that because we feel comfortable doing that there. Okay, so that's just one example of a professional brand, of a company and their branding process, okay? And think about the feeling that they provide you when you walk in through those doors, okay? And what keeps you coming back and visiting that particular company day after day after day after day, all right? Same with your own brand. What is it that you were promising? What is it that you were doing to have people coming back to you and work with you because you're the professional, you're the one they think of in that industry, all right? So that's the types of things that you need to think about for your own personal brand, all right? So there's a process to it. There's a couple of steps in creating and just even thinking about your own personal brand, okay? First is the discovery process, all right? Step one, who are you? What is it that you want to do in life? What are your strengths? What are your goals? What are your passions, okay? For me, mine all revolves around being an educator, all right? And this is some of the process that I go through when creating and maintaining, really, my own brand. But who are you? Who are you with your industry? Within your own industry. Who are you? What do you want to do? Think about your strengths and your passions and your goals, all right? So write some of these things down. Get them on paper. Get them on a screen somewhere, but start really thinking about these items in depth. Next is to create, all right? To create, the work that you produce should be representative of the message and the perception you would like of yourself. It should match. Just as I was telling you guys with the Rate My Professor, the way that I lecture should be in line with the way that other people say that I lecture. It all should be meshing and moving together, and it should be, as Nick is saying in the chat box, consistent. You want consistency with the work that you're creating. Next is communicating, right? You need to become your own public relations person, your own PR person. Put yourself out there. And, for me, guys, I'm older and I've seen this game change so much just from the internet and social media and the way that this works. Say, for instance, right now, I'm conducting my class from home right now, okay? 20 years ago, that would have been unheard of. Even 10 years ago, it was still very, very different, but now it's just as normal as it can be. But you must be the one creating the communication, creating the message that needs to be sent out there, okay? Controlling the message of your own personal brand. Lastly, you need to maintain, all right? So you can't go through steps 1, 2, and 3 and then say, oh, I'm done. I don't need to do anything else, right? Maintenance is the day-to-day grind that comes through to maintain your brand, okay? So your brand must grow and evolve just as you do. And that's where that day-to-day effort comes into play. Consistently creating new work, communicating your brand to others, okay? Consistently doing that maintenance work that goes along with your own personal brand. All right, guys, so you need to be transparent, okay? This comes back really to the concept of the Hale method, that authenticity portion of the Hale method, okay? You need to be honest, own yourself, give the audience your authentic self and not what you think they are expecting to see, okay? Some vulnerability and communication of humanness also goes a long way with communicating your brand. Be unique, okay? Don't hide your differences. Don't try to fit in better. Be okay with being the only person in the room, maybe with that particular viewpoint, okay? Stand out. Feel okay to stand out. And lastly, don't compromise. Speak very confidently about what you really believe in and who you are, and don't back down, okay? So use the power of your own personal brand to show who you are on the inside on the outside. Really own who it is that you are and who you're becoming in these next couple of years when you start to really think about your own personal brand. So for a lot of us here in my department, I think it's like 18 or 19 of us that teach creative presentation. Our boss, Katie, she asked us each to create our own professional website. So I'll share that with you guys. Again, that's part of branding, right? You want to communicate a message that is in line with who you are in your industry. So hopefully that is really all, gelling together, and it comes together and it's communicating who I am as an educator. And I'll share that with you guys as well. But it's part of that communication process and controlling the communication and the message that is out there. Okay. So do you guys have any questions about branding at this point? Again, really just tapping the surface into these concepts. It's very early in the process, but it's something that you definitely want to think about, especially as you're getting started. What is your own personal and professional brand? And how do you plan to create items that reflect your brand and communicate about your brand and maintain that, all right? So keep those ideas in mind when you're creating your own personal brand and pitching yourself to your future audience, all right? So just to recap, everything that we've talked about today, just with the assignments, guys, everything is due January 14th. 11:59 p.m. All right, that's going to be this upcoming Sunday prior to midnight. Everything needs to be submitted to the platform on time, no late work. We don't want to deal with late work and late penalties and all that yuck. So be sure that all of your week 2 items are in by Sunday. And just as a reminder, the week 1 items are due tonight, okay? So make sure that you have all of your week 1 assignments completed and submitted into the platform before 11:59 p.m. this evening, January 9th. And I will get the grading started for those starting tomorrow morning, okay? So do you guys have any questions for me about our material today, about the assignments today? Anything that I can clarify or speak with you more in detail about? Any questions? Matthew, I see you have your hand raised. Matthew, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Are you there? I'm not seeing a green microphone. Matthew, if you want to ask a question or talk over the microphone, just put a note in the chat box. Casey, so Casey, okay, so building your brand slideology, what verbs describe you? I actually have on this next slide that I do share sometimes are verbs that you would like to include in your own presentation style. And so think about that, guys. Think about that over the next couple of seconds. What are some of the verbs that you see on the screen? Verbs that would describe your own presentation style. So think about that. Matthew, I am going to come back to you. If you want to turn the microphone on.
There we go.
There you go. Hey.
I honestly just wanted to check and see if my mic was good.
It sounds great.
All right.
Testing.
That's all I needed.
Yeah, it sounds great on my end. You sound fine.
All right. That's all.
Thanks. Okay, guys. So what are some of the verbs that you would like to include in your own presentation style? Casey, thank you for bringing that up. What do you think that you would like to include in your own style as you start to develop it from this list here? And you can answer that in the chat box. Drive, enhance. Great. Drive. I like that one a lot, Ashley. What are some others? Ivan, love, improvise, entertain, conquer. Yeah, guys. So start thinking of these verbs. Like, who is it that you want to be as you're speaking to an audience? Okay. What are some of these verbs that you'd like to include? Emily's got ascend, lead, brighten, and believe. Gerard is open. That authenticity, again, motivate, advance. So really start to think about that. That's a wonderful exercise to get into, guys. So thank you for doing that and taking the time to just answer some of those. But I will stay here in our go-to session for a little while if you guys wanted to hang out for a bit and chat about this week's assignments and everything that's coming up and expectations. But I'll go ahead and turn off the recording, and hopefully everybody has a great day. But I will go ahead and stay in here if you guys have any questions.